Hello everyone. In today's concise video, we introduce a fundamental concept in contemporary moral philosophy, virtue ethics. Our exploration is guided by the work of Rosalind Hursthouse, a British-born New Zealand moral philosopher renowned for her seminal book on virtue ethics. This text is pivotal in the modern resurgence of virtue theory, often referred to as the era-take turn, and is hailed as a definitive exposition of neo-Aristotelian virtue ethics. Hursthouse's framework intricately weaves together morally upright actions, virtuous character traits, and the pursuit of human flourishing. Throughout this short video, our aim is to elucidate Hursthouse's conception of virtue and examine the diverse forms of virtue ethics, ultimately contributing to a deeper understanding of Rosalind Hursthouse invaluable insights into the discourse on virtue. Following Rosalind Hursthouse, virtue ethics is currently one of three major approaches in normative ethics. It may initially be identified as the one that emphasizes the virtues, or moral character, in contrast to the approach that emphasizes duties or rules, deontology, or that emphasizes the consequences of actions, consequentialism. What distinguishes virtue ethics from consequentialism or deontology is the centrality of virtue within the theory. Whereas consequentialists will define virtues as traits that yield good consequences, and deontologists will define them as traits possessed by those who reliably fulfill their duties, virtue ethicists will resist the attempt to define virtues in terms of some other concept that is taken to be more fundamental. Consider the example of a situation where a person finds a wallet containing a large sum of money on the street. A consequentialist might evaluate the situation based on the outcomes of various actions. If returning the wallet leads to overall positive consequences, such as the owner being relieved and grateful, and the finder feeling good about their honesty, then the consequentialist would likely advocate for returning the wallet. However, if the consequentialist believes that keeping the money would lead to greater overall happiness or utility, they might justify keeping it. On the other hand, a deontologist would focus on duties or rules. If there is a moral rule that one must always return lost items to their rightful owners, the deontologist would argue that returning the wallet is the morally correct action, regardless of the consequences. Similarly, if there is a duty to respect property rights, the deontologist would advocate for returning the wallet based on this principle alone. In contrast, a virtue ethicist would approach the situation by considering the character of the person involved. They would ask what a virtuous person would do in this situation. A virtuous person, according to virtue ethics, is someone who possesses virtuous traits such as honesty, integrity, and compassion. In this case, the virtue ethicist would argue that a virtuous person would naturally feel compelled to return the wallet out of honesty and a sense of justice, regardless of any specific rules or potential consequences. The focus is not on adhering to rules or maximizing outcomes, but on cultivating virtuous character traits and acting in accordance with them. Having a virtue isn't just a yes or no thing, it's more like a spectrum. Being perfectly virtuous, where you always do the right thing without any inner conflict, is pretty rare. Most people who are considered pretty virtuous still have areas where they struggle or fall short, like times when they don't act as well as they could. This might show up as doing the right thing in some situations but not others. It's also tough to balance your feelings with what you know is the right thing to do. Virtue ethicists say there's a difference between being totally virtuous and having continence, which means controlling desires that go against doing the right thing. While it might seem really impressive when someone does the right thing in a tough situation, whether it's truly admirable depends on whether the difficulty comes from outside circumstances or from flaws in their own character. Another way in which one can easily fall short of full virtue is through lacking phronesis, moral or practical wisdom. This is where practical wisdom, or phronesis, comes in. It's the ability to make sound judgments and act appropriately in various situations, considering not only immediate desires, but also long-term consequences and the well-being of others. Practical wisdom is cultivated through life experience, allowing one to recognize morally relevant aspects of a situation and prioritize them accordingly. Unlike adolescents, who may focus on what benefits them personally without considering broader implications, morally mature adults understand what truly matters in life and how to navigate it wisely. When we talk about forms of virtue ethics, we're referring to different ways that virtue ethicists approach and understand the concept of virtue and its role in moral philosophy. These forms represent distinct perspectives or approaches within the broader framework of virtue ethics. Each form emphasizes different aspects of virtue and may propose different methods for evaluating moral decisions and guiding ethical behavior. Some examples of forms of virtue ethics include eudaimonist virtue ethics, agent-based and exemplarist virtue ethics, target-centered virtue ethics, and Platonistic virtue ethics. Each form offers its own insights into what virtues are, how they are developed, and how they inform ethical decision-making. Eudaimonist virtue ethics is a form of virtue ethics that emphasizes the concept of eudaimonia, which is often translated as happiness or flourishing. In eudaimonist virtue ethics, the focus is on the idea that living a virtuous life leads to human flourishing and the fulfillment of one's potential. In this approach, virtues are seen as qualities or character traits that contribute to a person's overall well-being and flourishing. The ultimate aim is to cultivate these virtues in order to live a fulfilling and meaningful life. For example, consider the virtue of courage. In eudaimonist virtue ethics, courage is not just about acting bravely in the face of danger. It is also about having the inner strength to confront challenges, pursue one's goals, and overcome obstacles. By cultivating courage as a virtue, an individual can enhance their overall well-being and experience a deeper sense of fulfillment and satisfaction in life. Agent-based and exemplarist virtue ethics is a form of virtue ethics that focuses on the role of agents and exemplars in moral reasoning and development. Instead of abstract principles or rules, this approach emphasizes the importance of real-life individuals who embody virtuous traits and serve as models for ethical behavior. In agent-based and exemplarist virtue ethics, moral knowledge and understanding are acquired through observation and emulation of virtuous individuals, known as exemplars. These exemplars are admired for their moral character and serve as guides for others in navigating ethical dilemmas and making morally sound decisions. For example, instead of relying solely on abstract principles like "do unto others as you would have them do unto you," an agent-based and exemplarist approach might encourage individuals to look to historical figures or community members who have demonstrated admirable virtues in specific contexts. By studying these exemplars and their actions, individuals can gain insight into what it means to live a virtuous life and how to apply virtuous traits in their own circumstances. Target-centered virtue ethics is a form of virtue ethics that emphasizes the importance of moral aims or targets in guiding ethical behavior. Unlike other approaches that focus on virtues or character traits themselves, target-centered virtue ethics places greater emphasis on the goals or outcomes that individuals aim to achieve through their actions. In target-centered virtue ethics, moral decision-making is guided by the pursuit of specific moral aims or objectives, which are informed by virtuous ideals. These aims serve as the focal point for ethical deliberation and action, guiding individuals toward morally desirable outcomes. For example, instead of simply considering whether an action is honest or courageous, target-centered virtue ethics would encourage individuals to reflect on the specific moral aim they are trying to achieve in a given situation. This might involve considering how their actions contribute to the well-being of others, promote justice, or cultivate personal integrity. Platonistic virtue ethics is a philosophical approach that draws inspiration from the ideas of the ancient Greek philosopher Plato. In this form of virtue ethics, virtues are understood in relation to the forms or ideals posited by Plato. According to Plato, the forms represent the highest and most perfect manifestations of concepts such as justice, courage, wisdom, and temperance. In Platonistic virtue ethics, virtues are seen as objective and transcendent ideals that exist independently of human experience. Individuals strive to embody these virtues by aligning themselves with the forms through philosophical contemplation and intellectual inquiry. An example of Platonistic virtue ethics can be found in Plato's dialogues, such as The Republic, where he discusses the concept of justice and the ideal of the philosopher king. In this dialogue, Plato argues that justice is not merely a social convention or a matter of personal preference, but an objective and immutable form that exists in the realm of ideas. Platonistic virtue ethics emphasizes the importance of intellectual and moral cultivation in the pursuit of virtue. By seeking to understand and emulate the forms, individuals can aspire to a higher standard of moral excellence and achieve eudaimonia, or flourishing, in their lives. Hence, virtue ethics offers a distinctive approach to moral philosophy that focuses on the development of virtuous character traits and the cultivation of excellence in individuals. Rooted in ancient philosophies and revived in contemporary times, virtue ethics emphasizes the importance of virtues such as courage, honesty, compassion, and wisdom in guiding ethical behavior. Unlike consequentialism, which prioritizes the outcomes of actions, and deontology, which emphasizes adherence to moral rules, virtue ethics centers on the moral character of the agent and the cultivation of virtuous habits. By striving to embody virtuous qualities and aligning one's actions with the ideal of moral excellence, individuals can pursue a life of flourishing and fulfillment. Through the diverse forms of virtue ethics, ranging from eudaimonist to Platonistic perspectives, we gain valuable insights into what it means to live a morally meaningful and virtuous life. Thank you for your attention, and stay tuned for our exploration of another intriguing philosophical concept.